Hello, Dr. Rose here. Wanted to talk to you about investigations as research and also as research as an investigation. If you think of this back and forth, it will help you to properly acquire information, gather knowledge, and use that knowledge in a way that's going to help you succeed in whatever it is that you're doing, and particularly if you're going to be doing, say, criminal investigations or anything related to that, or even if you're doing formal academic research, it's the same process. And the idea is that you have to go through this process of inductive and deductive reasoning. And so over at the inductive phase, it really is the world of the information gathering and theory development. And of course, I use the video of My Cousin Vinny, where Mona Lisa Vito's testifying on the stand, is able to deduce that the vehicle in question was a Pontiac Tempest instead of a Buick Skylark, based on all the knowledge she acquired as an automotive engineer, technician, or mechanic, or what have you. And so she had all the time that she spent with her dad, her brothers, her uncles, learning how to work on cars. And so she was filling up her knowledge backpack with all that experience, with all that knowledge, all the manuals that she read, and other sources of information that she acquired this knowledge. And therefore, that inductive phase of looking at what she was doing, focusing on engines, transmissions, carburetors, you name it, and then constantly taking in information, talking to her uncles, and talking to her dad, talking to her brothers about more information, and just gathering that, filling up that knowledge backpack. So that is so important that we do that in our professions and in academic research. And what I'm describing here really is where we get to our lit review. And so one of the hardest things people have to do when they do any kind of research is they want to start typing out and getting the assignment done without ever looking at the literature in terms of what do we already know about this subject matter. And so they start writing. It's like, well, what are you basing that on? And when your knowledge backpack has maybe a few items in it, some coins and some lint or whatever, you need to fill it up with some actual knowledge. Well, the problem that we have is that, and this is very common in any organization, law enforcement especially, is that we have a tendency to limit the sources that we access, the content that come from those sources, and the volume of information that we take in. And you think about a police academy, they got limited time to, here's the basic stuff that we need you to operate off in the field. We're putting these pieces of information in your knowledge backpack, and we want you to go out there and make good decisions. Okay. One source, the academy, and whatever sources they get their information from, that's what's being conveyed. And so you have a little circle here representing your source, content, volume of knowledge. And in the academy and in the field training programs, they have a tendency to focus on the elements to crimes. And so if we're only looking at the elements of crimes, if we're only looking at the statutes, then we're very limited in the knowledge that we have. And I'll show you in a moment how dangerous that can be. And we get to the field training program, and a lot of it overlaps, but it's still a small circle. We get feedback from our peers and from the organizational culture, our supervisors, and that's the extent really of the knowledge that we acquire if we solely rely on what we're given in the organization that we're working for. So if you're a law enforcement officer, you go on patrol, that's what you have. You start to get a little more advanced training, and maybe you promote to investigator, and you're starting to expand that, and you're starting to expand your knowledge, but notice it's very much finite within this little realm here. What happens is people start getting anchored to, I have sufficient knowledge, I already know what I need to know, and they stop researching, they stop discovering. They stop learning about, well, what other dynamics do I need to be aware of? And I'll show you how important that is when it comes to, say, the Bobby Lou Scheffling case, where she's murdered by her significant other. 2 weeks after, she tries to report ongoing pattern abuse, and the officer at the desk blows her off and ignores her and says, and treats her as if she's the problem. In fact, calls her some vile names and off when she leaves, but still on camera. So his thing is, well, okay, this all happened before. Did you report it to anybody? I'm not going to invest the time into this case. I already have the information that I have. I know what I know, whatever. Well, what a lot of people don't understand is that case was ongoing for a long time. There was a situation where her abuser was in the passenger seat of the car that she was in, and he basically told her that either going to threaten serious bodily harm or death if she didn't run from the cops. She ran from the cops. And so pursuit goes along, she finally stops, gets arrested, takes the felony conviction for felony evading, and is on probation for that. Okay, so if you're only looking at elements of the crime, if you don't have a knowledge backpack full of the dynamics of pattern abuse and know what these victims go through, it wouldn't even come to mind that, okay, this is interesting. She's driving. He's in the passenger seat. Let me run the background. Oh, wow, there's some prior domestic violence reported here. If I have a knowledge backpack full of, well, I know this about these dynamics of pattern abuse. I know that they can't make their own decisions. I know they're constantly intimidated in a variety of ways, not just physical violence, but so many other ways to control and to intimidate and to keep them under the thumb of the abuser. Yes, I have her in custody for felony evading. We've solved that problem. Now I need to kind of back up and go, well, why did she run? And here's the thing in the acquisition of knowledge. Could Bobby tell the police, oh yeah, he threatened to kill me if I didn't run from you? No, of course not. Why not? Because all that information goes into that public record, and what the cop's going to do as soon as she tells him, hey, he made me do it, instead of actually holding off on talking to the abuser, let me do some background, some research, and see what other information we might have. They're going to go straight to the abuser. Hey, she says that you forced her to do this and that you're going to hurt or kill her if she didn't obey your orders. What's he going to say? Well, I didn't. No, of course not. I don't do that. That's not me. And then what's going to happen to her when they're together again? She gets abused again. And of course, again, she was murdered 2 weeks after she tried to report. If your knowledge backpack is full, which is not going to come from these sources of, wow, I'm going to learn from other people, other professionals, the psychological impacts of domestic violence. Didn't learn that here, maybe got a little bit of it here. And then I'm going to talk to other people that are experts. I'm going to look at the other research on pattern abuse cases. I'm going to go do this research and that. Look how much bigger that is in terms of I'm going to keep digging, keep digging, keep digging. It takes a long time. But whatever area of expertise that you're going to need to be effective in your job and to affect justice, you need to do that. But the problem that we have in this inductive phase is I'm learning, I'm good. I don't need anything else. Why do officers think they have sufficient information? Because the only feedback they get comes in that world of their peers, supervisors, and nobody's challenging me on this. Everybody says I'm right, and they never hear from the victims. That feedback doesn't come into play. So going back to Bobby, she couldn't tell the officers, and even if she could, would she? Because what treatment has she had from officers when she's tried to report in the past? Not our problem, you're the problem, why don't you just leave? In fact, the officer at the desk, why don't you just leave? Okay, what do I know about the dynamics of domestic violence? Let me see. We've seen situations where the abuser has the victim's driver's license, social security card, credit card, ATM card, car keys. I mean, they have all that stuff. And so if they have no access to the money, yeah, go ahead and leave. Again, inductive phase, if you're learning about this stuff, leave with what? And what do I know about the pattern abuse? What happens? What have they been threatened with if they leave? I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill the kids. I'm going to do all these horrific things to you. That comes from here. Not here, here. Keep filling that backpack up. Keep filling that backpack up, right? So the problem is that you have non-experts, in this case, first responders, who are not the experts. They have not acquired this knowledge. They don't have the time, they don't have the resources to fully investigate a detailed pattern abuse case. Instead of handing it off to an investigator that should be equipped here, which many times they're not, but they should be, tries to handle it themselves. Basically, in this officer dealing with Bobby's, I'm going to see if I can get a probation revoked. Incredible. So what happens is they make all these conclusions about Bobby here. So the idea is I'm going to apply the knowledge that I have, and in this case, the very limited knowledge that officer had, and I'm going to apply it to this specific issue. Who's the problem? Bobby is. Not the abuser, not the murderer. Bobby's the problem. You have two types of errors in the deductive phase. And the idea is if I have all this knowledge, and in this case, a lack of knowledge here, well, deductive reasoning is basically, this doesn't really apply, this factor doesn't fit in, this one doesn't. Well, what you can do is reject a variable that should have been considered. In this case, it wasn't even there, understanding victimology of pattern abuse victims. But let's say that they had some of that training, and they decided, well, in this case, she ran from the police, so she has nothing coming, so that victimology is out the door. So they got rid of a variable that should have been kept. Or, if they have a variable that should have been rejected or mitigated, in this case, she ran from us and she's a suspect. No, she's a victim. You should have thrown the suspect variable away and then have the variable of victimhood in there. So the idea is you can have two errors. Take a variable that you should have rejected and you keep it, or you overemphasize it, or you have a variable that you should have kept, but you rejected it. So either way, you're going to make errors here. One of the most important things you have to be aware of when you're dealing with research or an investigation is bias. And bias limits knowledge and wisdom. The most common bias that we have in law enforcement, if you're thinking from a research mindset, and if you're thinking in terms of getting it right and being disciplined reasoning, disciplined logic, disciplined observation, well, the idea is that the bias that we have in law enforcement that's so common is that we look for guilt instead of truth. It is very easy to satisfy the elements of a crime. But going back to the inductive phase, how many cops have I met that actually understand jury instructions or the Cal Crim codes? I haven't met anybody. Maybe a couple of detectives, but for the most part, line officers don't have this information. So if I understand the jury instructions, I have a lot more information in terms of when to apply self-defense, what the law says. So in the penal code, here, 692, 693, and 694 of the California Penal Code indicates what defines self-defense. It's the same codes that apply to officers when they use force. Haven't met a cop yet that know those sections. And then 3470 of Cal Crim has a very long and detailed list of things that can apply in a self-defense situation. And so I'm going to give you the Dave and Lisa scenario. And this was a real case out of San Diego, different names. But the idea is that Dave calls 911, says, hey, my wife punched me in the face and ran across the street. So the officer shows up. Sure enough, Dave has a bloody lip. Wife's across the street, shaking and trembling and crying. And wow, okay, what do we have? Dave and Lisa have been married for some time now. And all the officers thinking of the elements is that, wow, I have a qualifying relationship. They're married. I have a battery and I have a visible injury. California, felony domestic violence. Great, I have probable cause now to arrest Lisa. Well, the question is, well, do I arrest Lisa? Well, if you only stick to this, and if you only stick to what you know from what you were taught in the academy and your peer group and training and all that, if you know, okay, hold on a second. This is interesting. Lisa is acting extremely afraid. She is shaking. She can barely talk. What do I know about victimology? That looks like a victim. Now, you can't say I am concluding that's a victim and I'm going to reject, this particular element that, she can't be a suspect. We're not there yet. But go back to here. Okay, this looks like to me a victim. I need further information here. So I'm still in my inductive phase. I already have my knowledge backpack where I have training knowing what victimology looks like, but then I need to get specific information from Lisa. And this is where your trauma-informed interviewing techniques come in, where it's like, okay, I need to acquire information from Lisa so I can get more on the inductive side. If I can use those techniques to get Lisa to talk to me, wow, I'm probably going to get better information. If I only go on what, yeah, Dave, she punched me in the face. Lisa, yeah, I did. Well, Lisa's going to jail. Time out. Hold on a second. Let's get here. Lisa, what's going on? We've been married for 3 years. He's been abusing me all that time. He punches, kicks me, strangles me, beats me to unconsciousness, and then all the other stuff on the power and control wheel. Interesting. Wow. Does the law, penal codes, and Cal Crim codes say that Lisa can punch Dave in the face in self-defense? Yeah. So is Lisa going to jail? She better not. And here's the other thing. Are we done here? No. We have to keep digging into, okay, well now let's look at Dave. What do we know about Dave? So think in terms of research. Where do I find information about Dave? Well, I look at the criminal history, contacts. I can look at the court website for protective order applications. That is a gold mine of information to go in to see what they applied for. It doesn't even matter if they got it or not. This is one of the rare times where the victim feels that they can actually document some of these things without interference, without pressure. An officer is not right there in front of them and pressuring them for information very quickly. That's not a good trauma-informed interview technique. But they're sitting down and thinking about what's happened here. And I saw a case out of Riverside County where she was duct taped to a chair, beaten with a baseball bat, had a gun put to her head. That was in the application for a restraining order. It was an unreported case. So gold mine of information, Unreported cases. Most cops, well, if you didn't report it, I don't need to talk to you today. Statute of limitations for domestic violence in California, 5 years. Yeah, you should be talking about that. You should be investigating. You should be acquiring that information. And then once you have the, wow, I've got all this history, reported and unreported. I've got the application for the restraining order on the court website. I have our prior police reports, which scrutinize those because the officers in many of those cases got those investigations wrong or very limited. They didn't dig deep enough or fill that knowledge backpack up or use that information. I looked at medical records. Wow, these medical records show this, that, and the other. What other investigation or research can I do? Oh, phone records, text messages, photographs, the conversations that they have with each other on text messaging. I can go to the place of employment and talk to the coworkers. Well, yeah, he shows up. He calls at all hours of the day. I notice that she goes off on a phone call, comes back crying. Good information? Yeah, CalCrim also talks about how you can take that information because when you're looking at getting a conviction for domestic violence, you don't actually have to prove necessarily one particular event, but you can show the pattern. What's part of that pattern? It's admissible as evidence according to CalCrim. Yes, those phone calls. Yes, she was crying. Yes, all those different things that come into play. Would you ever know that if you didn't fill your knowledge backpack up with dynamics of being a pattern abuse victim? No. And that's a scary thing. Most cops, a lot of investigators, very few people in the world of law enforcement understand that this is what you need to acquire. Now think in terms of even academic research, right? Same thing. I'm going to write a paper because I already know and I have limited time. This semester is over in a few weeks and I got to get this paper. I procrastinated. I don't have time for that. Paper after paper after paper. It's like, I know what you're doing. You didn't do your lit review. You have to do your research. And again, going back to law enforcement, what's your lit review? You're not necessarily going to type it all out, but you need to be studying your craft so you know to make better decisions over here. You have to make it right. You have to pursue justice. It's going to take you more time. You're going to get more resistance. You're going to be dealing with people trying to convince people up the chain of command that are locked into this, hey, we need to do these things to help this victim and to get justice and resolve for this victim and safety for this victim. I'm trying to convey what I know to you. And these people are up the chain of command where you're trying to make them see the light. It's like, I don't need to know that. And this is just the way we've done it all. That's bias. The way we've done it all, that's a logical fallacy. Just because we've done it that way doesn't make it right way, right? So you're constantly dealing with this tension. People that know what they're talking about trying to communicate with people that don't. So again, whether you're doing research or doing an investigation, it really is the same thing. If you take the academic world into it and get disciplined at this, you will be much better equipped to do either one. Again, whether it's academic or practical, either one. And understand that if you have a few specks of information and you start going into the deductive phase, you can't do that effectively. You're missing, say, 20 variables that you should have been examining, and you're sitting there with 3. Well, I think I can confidently get rid of this one, and yes, this is absolutely what I'm... Take a hike with that. No, get more variables, study more variables, bring them into your scrutiny, and then, okay, which ones stay, which ones go, and how do I know? And then think in terms of what's my confidence level. So many people in life, high confidence, insufficient knowledge to have that level of confidence. Detailed research, flip it. Here's my confidence level, here's my knowledge level, hopefully, and here's the truth. Hopefully I can get there. Think of it this way. As you're conducting an investigation, particularly, say, on the Bobby case, or any other, say, domestic violence, Dave and Lisa, it doesn't matter. The idea is that if law enforcement is doing this, and we make an arrest based on probable cause, we make an arrest based on the elements of a crime, the penal codes, whatever, who do we know? Who can we guarantee is doing this that we have to face in court? That's right, the defense attorneys. How much time do we spend with defense attorneys outside of court? Very little. We get all mad because they come into court equipped here, and we get slapped upside the head and wonder, oh, I don't like that guy, I don't like that girl, I don't like these attorneys out here that are making me feel like an idiot. If you're operating here, you probably might have some semblance of being an idiot, right? Know that these people are going to come in and beat you up with more information if you're not prepared for this. So be very careful about that. Be a good investigator, be a good researcher, understand how the thought process works. Keep filling up that knowledge backpack. I don't care how much you fill it, keep filling it more. People that just read books and journal articles and any source of information, go get as much advanced training as you possibly can, expand that, get that backpack full, and then you'll know before anybody else even, these people have to start from nothing. And we have to work with them. And you know who these people are. It's like mistake after mistake after mistake, and they don't even realize why they're doing it. Meanwhile, those that are doing it well and are wise keep getting more knowledge. They never rest on what they think they know and constantly doubting what they think they know, but still, you have to make a decision, but keep filling that backpack up. Now you're in a position where it's like, I have all these variables to consider. Okay. Based on what I know, based on the research, based on my world experience and past history, I know I can take that out, take that out, take that out, take that out. But I'm still left with numerous variables here that I cannot necessarily reject or mitigate or really overemphasize. I need more time, more research. But at the end of the day, most cases where you have to make a decision, you still have a lot of stuff left over that you can't necessarily deduce. You can't take any more away, so you're left with a big question mark. That's the best you can do sometimes. But at least you're doing it from a better position here instead of doing this ignorant nonsense here. So don't be this person, be this person. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if I can help in any way.